Have you started noticing things in the world that you never saw before? Not just small details, but deeper patterns in the way people act, the way situations unfold, and the hidden meaning behind everyday moments. Perhaps certain conversations now feel different, as if you can sense what lies beneath the words. Maybe you have begun to realize that some things you once accepted without question no longer feel true to you. It can feel strange at first, almost as if the world has subtly changed overnight. Many people experience this shift at some point in their lives. It often begins quietly. You start to see through illusions that once seemed completely normal. Situations that used to make sense begin to look different when viewed from a new perspective. The routines, expectations, and narratives that once guided your thinking may suddenly feel incomplete or even misleading. It's as if a layer has been lifted, revealing something deeper that was always there but remained hidden from view. At the same time, your intuition may begin to grow stronger. You might notice moments where you simply know something without being able to logically explain it. A feeling tells you when something is right or when something is off. You may sense the energy in a room the moment you walk in, or feel that certain people are not being completely genuine, even when their words sound convincing. These experiences can be confusing, especially if they appear suddenly, but they are also surprisingly common among people who are going through a deeper shift in awareness. Sometimes this change shows up in small, unexpected ways. You might start questioning beliefs that you once held firmly. Ideas about success, happiness, relationships, or purpose may begin to evolve. Activities that once excited you may now feel empty, while things you never paid attention to before begin to capture your curiosity. It can feel like your perspective is expanding, allowing you to notice patterns and truths that previously stayed outside your awareness. For some people, this process brings a mixture of clarity and uncertainty. On one hand, you may feel more aware than ever before. On the other hand, the realization that many things are not exactly as they seemed can feel unsettling. You might even wonder whether something unusual is happening to you. But what many people eventually discover is that this experience is not about losing your way. In many cases, it is about seeing more clearly for the first time. If you've been experiencing these shifts, it may be a sign that your spiritual eyes are beginning to open. This doesn't necessarily mean anything mystical or dramatic. Often it simply means that your awareness is expanding beyond the surface level of everyday life. You are beginning to notice deeper connections, hidden motivations, and the subtle signals that guide your inner sense of truth. The journey of awareness can look different for everyone. Some people notice it through stronger intuition. Others experience it through a growing desire for authenticity and meaning. But the common thread is that once your perception begins to change, it becomes difficult to return to the way you saw the world before. If this message resonates with you, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who may be going through the same journey, and subscribe to the channel for more insights like this. As spiritual awareness begins to grow, one of the first things many people notice is a gradual shift in how they interpret the world around them. Situations that once seemed ordinary or unquestionable begin to reveal deeper layers of meaning. It may feel as if a filter that once shaped your perception has started to fade, allowing you to see patterns and dynamics that were previously hidden in plain sight. This change rarely happens overnight. Instead, it unfolds slowly, through moments of realization that accumulate over time. You may begin to recognize patterns in the way society operates. Systems that once appeared natural or inevitable may start to look more like structures built upon habits, expectations, and collective assumptions. For example, you might begin to notice how certain beliefs are repeated so often that they are rarely questioned. Ideas about success, identity, status, or fulfillment may start to appear less universal and more like cultural narratives that people follow without examining too closely. When your awareness expands, these patterns become easier to observe. This realization does not necessarily mean rejecting everything around you. Rather, it means that you start observing how these systems influence behavior and decision-making. You may notice how people often move through life following scripts that were handed to them by family, media, or social pressure. Certain goals are pursued not because they truly resonate with someone's inner values, but because they have been presented as the standard path everyone is expected to follow. As your perspective changes, you may begin to question whether those expectations truly align with who you are becoming. With this new awareness, questioning becomes a natural part of your thinking process. Ideas that you once accepted without reflection may now invite deeper examination. You might ask yourself why certain beliefs were considered obvious or unquestionable in the past. Perhaps you realize that many of those ideas were never truly yours to begin with. They were simply absorbed from the environment around you during earlier stages of life. This questioning can extend into many areas of everyday experience. It may appear in conversations where familiar opinions suddenly feel incomplete. It might arise when you encounter information that contradicts something you previously believed. Instead of automatically rejecting or accepting new perspectives, you may feel compelled to explore them more carefully. This curiosity is not about rebellion for its own sake. It is about seeking clarity and understanding. Another noticeable change during this stage is an increased awareness of people's intentions. When spiritual perception begins to sharpen, you may find yourself sensing the emotional undercurrents behind someone's words or actions. Conversations can start to feel different because you are no longer listening only to what is being said on the surface. You may also notice the tone, the pauses, the subtle shifts in energy that reveal how a person truly feels. For example, there may be moments when someone speaks kindly, yet something about their presence feels slightly misaligned with their words. In the past, you might have dismissed that feeling or ignored it entirely. Now, however, your intuition may encourage you to pay closer attention. This does not mean assuming the worst about people. Instead, it reflects a growing ability to perceive the complex emotional signals that exist in every interaction. At the same time, you may also begin to recognize authenticity more clearly. Just as you become more aware of insincerity, you may develop a deeper appreciation for honesty and genuine connection. Conversations that are open, thoughtful, and real can feel far more meaningful than exchanges that revolve around surface-level topics. As a result, your preferences in social interactions may gradually change. This shift can sometimes make everyday environments feel slightly uncomfortable. Situations that revolve around appearances, competition, or superficial validation may begin to lose their appeal. You might notice that certain social settings emphasize image more than substance. When your awareness expands, these dynamics become easier to see, and once they are seen, it becomes difficult to ignore them. For instance, you may observe how people sometimes shape their behavior in order to gain approval or maintain a certain image. Social media interactions, workplace dynamics, and even casual conversations can reveal subtle pressures that encourage conformity. While these behaviors are common and often harmless, recognizing them more clearly can change how you feel about participating in them. As your perspective evolves, you may find yourself becoming more sensitive to dishonesty or superficial behavior. Small inconsistencies that once passed unnoticed may now stand out more clearly. This heightened awareness can initially feel overwhelming, especially if you begin noticing these patterns in places where you once felt completely comfortable. However, this stage is not about withdrawing from the world or viewing everything with suspicion. The purpose of this growing awareness is not to isolate you from others, but to help you understand the complexity of human behavior more deeply. When you see patterns more clearly, you also gain the ability to respond with greater wisdom and balance. It is important to remember that noticing illusions does not mean the world itself is false or meaningless. Rather, it suggests that many aspects of everyday life operate on assumptions that people rarely examine. Becoming aware of those assumptions allows you to engage with life more consciously instead of moving through it on autopilot. Some people worry that this process might make them more negative or critical. They may wonder whether questioning familiar beliefs or noticing hidden dynamics will eventually lead to cynicism. In reality, the opposite is often true. When awareness expands in a healthy way, it encourages curiosity rather than judgment. Instead of reacting with frustration or superiority, many individuals find that their perspective becomes more compassionate. Understanding the patterns that influence behavior can make it easier to recognize why people act the way they do. Everyone is shaped by their environment, experiences, and beliefs. Realizing this can create space for empathy rather than resentment. For example, When you see someone following a path that does not seem authentic to them, you may understand that they are responding to expectations they have carried for years. When you notice someone presenting an image that feels artificial, you may recognize that they are trying to protect themselves or gain acceptance. These insights can soften your response rather than harden it. The deeper purpose of seeing through illusions is not to dismantle everything around you. It is to bring greater clarity into your perception so that your choices become more intentional. Instead of automatically accepting or rejecting the world's narratives, you begin to evaluate them with a clearer mind. Over time, this awareness allows you to align your life more closely with your genuine values. Decisions that once felt confusing may become easier because you are no longer guided solely by external expectations. You start listening more carefully to the inner sense of truth that emerges as your perception grows clearer. For many people, this stage of awareness marks the beginning of a more authentic relationship with the world. You are no longer limited to the surface level of experiences. You begin to see the patterns, motivations, and structures that shape everyday life. While this realization can sometimes feel intense, it also offers a powerful opportunity to grow. And it is important to remember that this shift does not mean you are becoming negative or cynical. It simply means your awareness is expanding, allowing you to see things more clearly than before. As your awareness begins to deepen, another shift often follows. Your intuition starts becoming stronger and more noticeable. For many people, this is one of the most surprising parts of the awakening process. You may begin to realize that your inner guidance system has always been there, quietly offering signals and impressions, but only now are you starting to recognize it clearly. Intuition does not usually arrive as a loud voice or a dramatic revelation. Most of the time it appears as a subtle feeling, a quiet sense of knowing that emerges before logic has time to explain it. In the past, you might have dismissed these impressions or ignored them because they did not seem rational enough. Society tends to emphasize analytical thinking, which can lead people to distrust anything that cannot be easily explained. But as your perception evolves, you may notice that these quiet inner signals are often accurate in ways that surprise you. One of the first changes people experience is a growing tendency to trust their gut feeling. Situations that once required long periods of analysis may suddenly feel clearer almost immediately. You might enter a room and instinctively sense whether the atmosphere feels welcoming or tense. You may meet someone new and quickly feel either comfortable or uneasy around them, even before you know much about their personality or background. At first, this can feel confusing. You may ask yourself why a particular situation feels right or wrong without having obvious evidence. However, as time passes, you may notice that these intuitive impressions frequently align with later outcomes. A decision that felt correct in your gut may turn out to be beneficial. A warning signal you felt internally may later reveal itself as accurate. These experiences gradually build confidence in your ability to listen to that quiet inner voice. This growing trust in intuition does not mean abandoning logic or careful thinking. Rather, it means allowing intuition and reasoning to work together. Intuition often provides the initial signal, while logic helps you evaluate how to act on that signal. When both aspects are balanced, your decision-making process becomes more complete. Another change that often occurs during this stage is a heightened sensitivity to the energy of people and environments. While the word energy can sound abstract, most people have experienced it in everyday life without labeling it in that way. For instance, you may have walked into a room where an argument had just taken place and sensed the tension immediately, even though no one mentioned it directly. You might have also noticed how certain places feel calm and uplifting, while others feel heavy or uncomfortable. As your awareness expands, these impressions may become more noticeable. You might find that certain environments influence your mood more strongly than before. A peaceful natural setting might bring a sense of clarity and calm that feels almost restorative. On the other hand, crowded or chaotic spaces may feel overwhelming more quickly than they once did. The same sensitivity can appear in interactions with people. Some individuals may naturally leave you feeling energized, understood, and inspired after a conversation. Others may leave you feeling drained or uneasy, even if the interaction seemed polite on the surface. This does not necessarily mean that one person is good and the other is bad. It simply reflects the complex emotional and psychological dynamics that exist between individuals. As intuition strengthens, you may start noticing these dynamics more clearly. Instead of ignoring subtle feelings of discomfort, you may begin to pay attention to them and ask what they might be trying to tell you. In many cases, this awareness helps you navigate relationships more wisely. You may naturally gravitate toward people whose presence feels supportive and genuine, while gradually distancing yourself from environments that feel misaligned with your well-being. Another phenomenon that often becomes more noticeable during this period is synchronicity. Synchronicity refers to meaningful coincidences that appear to connect events in ways that feel unlikely to be random. While coincidences happen to everyone, people who are becoming more aware often report noticing them more frequently. For example, you might suddenly think about someone you have not spoken to in a long time, only to receive a message from them later that same day. Perhaps you are searching for guidance about a decision, and you encounter a conversation, article, or piece of advice that addresses exactly what you were wondering about. These moments can feel strangely precise, as if different parts of your experience are aligning in ways that help you move forward. It is important to understand that synchronicity does not necessarily mean that every coincidence carries a hidden message. Life naturally contains many random events. However, when awareness grows, people tend to become more attentive to patterns that previously went unnoticed. This increased attention can make meaningful connections stand out more clearly. Experiences like these often encourage people to pay closer attention to their inner signals. When a strong intuitive feeling aligns with events that later confirm it, the mind begins to recognize that intuition may have more value than previously assumed. Over time, this recognition strengthens the relationship between conscious awareness and inner guidance. Consider a situation that many viewers may recognize. Imagine you are about to attend an event, accept an invitation, or enter a situation that appears completely normal on the surface. Yet something inside you feels hesitant. There may be no clear explanation for the discomfort, and part of your mind might try to dismiss it as overthinking. Still, the feeling remains persistent. If you choose to listen to that instinct and decide not to go, you might later discover that avoiding the situation was beneficial. Perhaps the environment would have been stressful, the timing inconvenient, or the circumstances simply not right for you. Experiences like this can gradually reshape how you interpret your inner signals. Another relatable moment occurs when someone unexpectedly crosses your mind. You may be going about your day when the memory of a person suddenly appears in your thoughts without an obvious reason. Later, that same person reaches out to you, or you encounter them in an unexpected place. While these moments may seem small, they often leave a lasting impression because of their timing. These kinds of experiences do not require mystical explanations to be meaningful. They simply highlight how interconnected human perception and awareness can be. As your spiritual awareness expands, your mind becomes more attentive to subtle signals, both internal and external. This attentiveness can make connections and patterns more visible. Over time, this process helps cultivate a deeper relationship with your own inner guidance. Instead of constantly seeking answers from outside sources, you may begin to trust your internal sense of direction more often. Advice from others can still be valuable, but it becomes one piece of the puzzle rather than the only source of guidance. This shift can feel empowering because it places greater responsibility for decision-making within your own awareness. You begin to realize that many of the signals you need are already present within you. They appear as feelings, impressions, instincts, and moments of clarity that arise when your mind becomes quiet enough to notice them. However, developing this awareness also requires patience. Intuition becomes clearer when you learn to pause, reflect, and observe your internal reactions without immediately dismissing them. In a world that often encourages constant activity and distraction, creating moments of quiet attention can make a significant difference. When you allow yourself to slow down and listen, you may discover that your intuition has been guiding you far more often than you realized. It appears in the small nudges that influence your decisions, the feelings that guide you towards certain paths, and the subtle signals that help you avoid situations that are not aligned with your well-being. Intuition is a form of inner awareness that many people ignore. When your spiritual eyes begin to open, that inner voice becomes much harder to overlook. As your awareness continues to expand and your intuition becomes more reliable, another noticeable change often begins to take place. The way you relate to people and social environments may start to shift. This stage can be subtle at first, but over time it becomes difficult to ignore. Many individuals who experience deeper self-awareness eventually realize that they are beginning to separate, at least mentally and emotionally, from certain aspects of the crowd around them. This does not mean that you suddenly reject society or lose the ability to connect with others. Instead, the nature of your interests and priorities begins to evolve. Conversations that once felt engaging may start to feel repetitive or empty. You might notice that discussions centered only on appearances, gossip, status, or material comparison no longer capture your attention the way they once did. It may feel as though your mind is searching for something deeper, something more meaningful than surface-level interaction. In earlier stages of life, shallow conversations can feel completely normal. They often serve as a social bridge, allowing people to connect easily without revealing too much about themselves. But when awareness grows, you may start to feel that these exchanges lack substance. Instead of focusing on trivial topics, you might find yourself wanting to discuss ideas, experiences, and perspectives that reveal more about who people truly are. This shift does not mean that light-hearted conversation becomes impossible or unimportant. Rather, it means that your sense of fulfillment increasingly comes from interactions that involve honesty, reflection, and genuine curiosity about life. You may find yourself drawn to people who are willing to explore meaningful topics, such as personal growth, purpose, creativity, or the deeper patterns that shape human experience. At the same time, you may begin to feel less interested in lifestyles that revolve entirely around external validation. Social environments that prioritize image, competition, or constant comparison can start to feel exhausting. When awareness expands, it becomes easier to see how much energy people invest in maintaining appearances rather than cultivating inner fulfillment. For example, you might notice situations where individuals feel pressured to display success, happiness, or confidence, even when they are struggling privately. While this behavior is common and understandable, recognizing it more clearly can change how you respond to those environments. Instead of feeling motivated by the same social pressures, you may feel a growing desire to step away from them. This gradual shift can lead you toward a stronger interest in personal growth. You may start dedicating more time to reflection, learning, or activities that help you understand yourself more deeply. Reading, journaling, meditation, creative expression, or quiet time in nature may begin to feel more valuable than constant social activity. As your priorities change, you may also begin evaluating the environments you spend time in. Certain places that once felt comfortable may no longer align with your evolving perspective. This does not necessarily mean those environments are negative. It simply means they no longer support the direction in which your awareness is moving. For instance, you might realize that some social circles revolve around habits or conversations that no longer resonate with you. When this happens, you may gradually reduce the amount of time you spend in those settings. The decision often happens naturally rather than dramatically. You may simply notice that your energy feels better when you focus on activities and relationships that reflect your current values. Distancing yourself from certain environments can sometimes be misunderstood by others. Friends or acquaintances may notice that you are changing, even if they cannot fully explain how or why. In some cases, they may interpret your shift as withdrawal or disinterest. This can create moments of tension or confusion, especially if your previous lifestyle was closely tied to those social dynamics. During this stage, it is important to remember that personal growth often involves change. As people evolve, their interests, beliefs, and priorities naturally shift. This process can sometimes create distance between individuals who were once closely aligned, but it also opens the possibility of forming new connections with people who share your evolving perspective. One of the emotional experiences that often accompanies this stage is a sense of isolation. As your interests and awareness change, you may occasionally feel as though fewer people around you fully understand what you are experiencing. Conversations that once flowed easily may now feel slightly disconnected, simply because your perspective has moved in a different direction. This feeling of being different from those around you can be unsettling at first. Humans naturally seek belonging and connection, and when your internal world begins to change, it can create the impression that you are stepping outside familiar social patterns. There may be moments when you question whether the shift you are experiencing is leading you away from others. However, isolation during this stage is often temporary. In many cases, it represents a transitional period rather than a permanent condition. As you continue growing and clarifying your values, you may begin encountering individuals who resonate with your perspective more naturally. These connections often form around shared curiosity, authenticity, and a mutual desire to understand life on a deeper level. It is also helpful to recognize that feeling different does not mean being disconnected from humanity as a whole. In fact, many people around the world go through similar phases of self-discovery and awareness. The experience may feel personal and unique, but it is part of a broader human process of growth and transformation. Another important realization during this stage is that separating from the crowd does not require rejecting people who are on different paths. Every individual moves through life according to their own timing and experiences. Some may prioritize stability and familiarity, while others feel drawn toward exploration and change. Neither approach is inherently right or wrong. When awareness expands, the goal is not to judge others for their choices. Instead, it is to recognize that your own path is evolving in a way that requires different experiences and priorities. By respecting both your journey and the journeys of others, you can maintain compassion while still honoring your personal growth. Over time, you may discover that the sense of separation gradually transforms into a stronger sense of authenticity. Rather than feeling disconnected, you begin to feel more aligned with who you truly are. Your decisions become guided less by external expectations and more by your internal understanding of what feels meaningful and true. This alignment often leads to a quieter but more stable form of confidence. You no longer feel the same need to follow every trend or social expectation. Instead, you move through life with a clearer awareness of your values and priorities. While this may reduce the number of superficial connections you maintain, it often strengthens the quality of the relationships that remain. It is also worth noting that separating from the crowd does not mean isolating yourself from society entirely. Humans are social beings, and connection remains an essential part of well-being. The difference is that the connections you seek now tend to revolve around authenticity rather than conformity. You may begin to appreciate relationships where honesty is valued over appearances, where curiosity replaces judgment, and where people feel comfortable sharing their real experiences rather than maintaining perfect images. These kinds of interactions often feel more fulfilling because they reflect genuine understanding rather than social performance. If you are currently experiencing this stage, it is important to approach it with patience. Growth rarely happens in a straight line. There may be moments of uncertainty, periods of reflection, and times when you wonder how your evolving awareness will shape your future relationships. These questions are a natural part of the process. What matters most is remaining open to the changes taking place within you. By allowing yourself to explore new perspectives and align your life with your deeper values, you gradually move closer to a more authentic version of yourself. This stage can feel lonely at times, but it often represents a transition toward a more authentic version of yourself. As we reach the end of this discussion, it is helpful to pause and reflect on the journey we have just explored. The process of spiritual awareness rarely begins with dramatic events. More often, it unfolds quietly through subtle shifts in perception, emotion, and understanding. Over time, these small changes begin to shape the way you interpret the world around you and the way you relate to your own inner voice. One of the first signs of this shift is the ability to see through illusions that once seemed completely normal. Many of the beliefs, expectations, and social patterns that guide everyday life are built on assumptions that people rarely question. As your awareness grows, you may begin to recognize these patterns more clearly. Situations that once appeared simple may reveal deeper layers of meaning. Conversations may carry emotional signals that were previously overlooked. Instead of accepting everything at face value, you begin observing the underlying dynamics that influence how people think and behave. This expanded perception does not mean rejecting the world or becoming cynical about it. Rather, it represents a clearer understanding of how human systems and relationships function. When illusions lose their power, you gain the freedom to interpret your experiences with greater awareness. Instead of reacting automatically to external pressures or expectations, you begin to evaluate them thoughtfully. This clarity can gradually reshape your decisions and priorities in ways that feel more aligned with your authentic values. At the same time, another important change often emerges. Your intuition becomes stronger and more reliable. What once felt like vague impressions or fleeting instincts may begin to reveal themselves as meaningful signals. The quiet inner voice that many people ignore starts to become more noticeable. You may find yourself sensing whether a situation feels right or wrong long before logical explanations appear. Over time, these intuitive signals often prove to be surprisingly accurate. Learning to trust this inner guidance does not require abandoning rational thinking. In fact, intuition and logic can work together to create a more balanced approach to decision-making. Intuition offers insight from subtle emotional and psychological cues, while reasoning helps you evaluate how to act on that insight. As both forms of awareness begin to cooperate, your ability to navigate complex situations often becomes more confident and steady. Another transformation that frequently accompanies this stage is a gradual separation from environments that no longer align with who you are becoming. As your awareness deepens, your interests and priorities may change. Conversations centered entirely on appearances or superficial validation may begin to feel less fulfilling. Social settings that once seemed exciting may now feel exhausting or disconnected from your deeper values. This shift does not necessarily mean rejecting people or distancing yourself from society as a whole. Instead, it reflects a natural process of realignment. You begin gravitating toward experiences, ideas, and relationships that support authenticity and personal growth. In doing so, you may step away from certain environments that no longer resonate with the direction your awareness is taking. Although this stage can sometimes feel isolating, it also creates space for more meaningful connections. When you move closer to your authentic perspective, you are more likely to encounter individuals who share similar curiosity about life, growth, and understanding. These connections often feel deeper because they are built on sincerity rather than social expectation. If you recognize these signs in your life, it may mean that your spiritual awareness is expanding and your spiritual eyes are beginning to open. This process is not about becoming perfect or achieving some distant ideal. It is about becoming more conscious of your perceptions, your values, and the subtle signals that guide your inner sense of truth. Every person's journey unfolds differently, and there is no single timeline for awareness or growth. What matters most is remaining open to the insights that emerge along the way. When you learn to observe your experiences with curiosity and honesty, each stage of awareness becomes an opportunity to understand yourself and the world more clearly. If this video spoke to you, make sure to like it, share it with someone who might need to hear this message, and subscribe to the channel for more content on personal awakening and inner growth.